you work for it. When you believe in something, you fight for it. And most of all, when you start something, you never give up.
After delivering a primetime speech that drew roaring applause in the room, the results were in. Pierre Poilievre won more than 87% support, easily clearing the threshold needed to remain as leader. As Poilievre laid out his vision for the country, he also took some familiar shots at the Liberal government.
Canadians cannot afford life under the Liberal government. Liberal laws have unleashed crime. Get the federal government out of the way, get the permits so we can get shovels in ground, and that's what we will do.
Poilievre also delivered a message of hope and unity, something he wants to continue coming out of this convention, and a departure, really, from his sharp-elbowed style of politics.
Hope is the knowledge that your work will fulfill your purpose, your why. This country, its people, and promise are worth fighting for, because while some say this is as good as it gets, we know the best is yet to come. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome. I'm Rosemary Barton here again Saturday morning with my colleague David Cochrane, and we've got a whole bunch of Conservatives to talk about that overwhelming result for Pierre Poilievre, the vision the Conservative Party laid out for his party as they chart a path towards the next election. The results came in late last night, around 11:30 Mountain, so close to 2 a.m. Eastern. May have happened before as you all went to bed. So we wanted to take a moment to sort of mark what is a significant number for Pierre Poilievre as he resets and tries to gain some momentum coming out of this convention. Let's start, of course, with the host of the CBC's Power and Politics, David Cochrane. So it was you were right, as it turns out. You thought it would be a big number, bigger than what some people were saying, and it wasn't a 9 in front of it, but he got pretty close.
No, look, Rosie, it's been a long time since I got 87% on any kind of a test that I had to do. So, it's lower than the 90 that I thought Pierre Poilievre would get, but that in no way diminishes this result. I mean, this is a resounding, overwhelming endorsement, which is what the Conservatives were looking for. So it is very difficult to find anything bad about this. I mean, this is an overwhelming victory. The party is clearly with them. Certainly the thousands of delegates who traveled all the way to Calgary to be here with Pierre Poilievre. And, you saw in the speech last night an affable, relaxed, human, personal delivery from the Conservative leader. Different than sort of the pugilistic and brass-knuckled, bare-knuckled kind of style you're used to, sort of in the heat of the political arena. The question now is whether that is what we see from Pierre Poilievre going forward. A year ago, he was inevitable and he was invincible, and last night he had to have his leadership put to a test because of the twin defeats in Carleton and in the national election. Clearly, the age of the one and done, the streak of the one and done with the Conservative Party is over. They've seen the folly of that as the Liberals have won 4 straight elections. And to avoid, a 5-election losing streak, they think it's the best move is to stick with Pierre Poilievre for at least one more election and give him the chance to do what nobody has done since Stephen Harper in 2006. That's to lose an election and then form government in the next one.
Yeah, and that's sort of the gamble they're taking here.
Yeah.
And that's the reason they wanted this strong mandate coming out of this. I know that a lot of Conservatives who were texting last night were very, very happy. They didn't want to get their hopes up too high, but this was a strong number and a strong showing for the Conservative leader. Kate Harrison is Conservative political analyst. Fred Delory, former Conservative campaign manager. They join David and I now because we talked before the number. Now we're talking after the number. Fred, what did you make of the results?
Oh, look, as David and you mentioned, very strong results, and I think we just have to remember you can never count Pierre Poilievre out. It was a rough year. We had a huge lead in the polls, but we ended up losing the election. He lost his own seat. He got re-elected in the by-election. We had floor crossers right before Christmas. We lost 2 members of Parliament across the Liberals. He still stuck with it, still kept going, and a massive, massive endorsement of his leadership yesterday. I think the main message coming out that we are united, the party's united, and it's going to be back to work on Monday in Ottawa and holding the government to account. And I think we're going to see, what is the chart, the path forward to government for this party.
Something like this does give some momentum, and I don't think you can discount that. Even talking to just delegates this morning as I came in, they feel really excited again, after feeling pretty dejected for a number of months.
Yeah, and I think about, how Mark Carney came in, in a huge, rush to replace Prime Minister Trudeau, a very quick leadership race. You don't really have the same opportunity to build out that grassroots support network and, give voice to the people that are working the doors. And I think, Mr. Poilievre made reference to eating cold campaign pizza and things like this. And that's what stood out for me in this speech. It was a message to Canadians, but it was also a reminder to the volunteers and many people in this room that are working on those elections that he has their back, and now we know that that they have his. So I think that was a nice contrast from the Prime Minister who came in as a leader, hasn't had the upcoming as a member of Parliament and having had to build that more political muscle. Poilievre has been in the trenches, and I would say that there's a decent argument that right now, when you want Parliament to work, you actually need somebody who gets politics and has been in the seat to be the one to kind of help pull things together.
They've got an opportunity now. The Conservatives, after 2.5 years of just setting the news agenda in the country and dominating the news cycle, as issues and focus moves more to the international diplomacy, trade aspect of government, they're getting squeezed out a little bit, right? So this gives them a chance to get back in, but also to take negative out of the news cycle, because it's been about sliding in polls, defeats, questions about leadership, floor crossings, resignations from politics. So it's a chance to sort of reset, stabilize things underneath their feet. But Rosie, for that to persist, the floor crossings have to be over. I'm not suggesting anything is diminished or anything is happening, but this needs to be it, right? They need to be at a new baseline with a clean start, shake the Etch-a-Sketch and start drawing a new picture going forward from here.
I mean, if you want it to be difficult, and the Liberals might, we would look for a way to destabilize things, right? So I guess I would ask both of you, what do you think Pierre Poilievre has to do for Caucus to make sure that those conversations don't happen again?
Well, look, I think if you're a Conservative, you're elected as a Conservative, and you can see the support that he has from the party, that should be a huge, huge indicator of where people are. And again, look back at history. Look at Harper. I remember in 2005, I was on the campaign in 2004, and we lost. It was tough. A lot of people were saying he couldn't win. His negatives were too high. He wasn't likable amongst Canadians, and those who stuck with him saw what came of it. He ended up becoming Canada's 6th longest serving Prime Minister. So I think right now, if you're here, if you're a Conservative, and if you're a member of Caucus and you're questioning it, then maybe you were never a Conservative to begin with and don't belong in the party. But I'm not hearing any more rumblings on this. The last rumblings we heard was New Democrats are the ones the Liberals are going after now. So I think the floor crossing is likely done. Maybe someday, the next, it'll go other directions. We had the NDP leadership in the end of March, and there's still a big progressive caucus in that Liberal Party that were true to Liberals. I don't know how well they're all keeping with the new Carney government, and maybe we'll see something go to the NDP at some point.
Well, usually you like to stick with the winner, is my experience, but you never know.
But if you have these hardcore progressive views, and your party has shifted drastically on you, do you have values or do you not, is the question.
So I'm not questioning whether Caucus is behind him. I think we've seen that. We've talked to enough people that we know that. But how does that translate practically? Because one of the criticisms, and it's changed a little bit, is that Mr. Poilievre took up a lot of space and didn't let others take up so much space. Mr. Scheer gets a lot of time. But other than this weekend, we don't see MPs all the time everywhere. And I wonder whether that also has to continue to allow the team, which there are members that are very strong and very strong communicators, to be present.
I think absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have definitely observed, and I'm sure you have as well, by the presence of Conservative MPs on your shows.
Physically in the studio. It's a remarkable
coming to see
shift,
you and being human, that there is a strong team, and that you can't rely on one person to get the message out. It needs to be a team effort. I do think for anybody that might have been on the fence or wondering if there was the potential for a floor crossing, they're going to look at that 87.4% and I think maybe have second or third guesses about whether or not that's the right thing. That's the right thing to do. But I do think that Poilievre benefits from a really strong caucus and a bench. Shuv Majumdar, Adam Chambers, Melissa Landsman, these are people, Jamil Javani, these are people that can really carry a message out. And I think that's a benefit for Canadians to see the Conservative team. I know we're in an era of leader-driven politics, and that's not unique to Canada, but I do think that, especially when we're talking about keeping young people engaged, seeing some of those young faces that are part of the caucus table also carrying that message will be impactful.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that is, it's not just having them out there, it's like casting them for future roles. Like, who would be the finance minister?
Yeah.
Is it Mr. Holland, the finance critic? I don't know. That's not really kind of been made clear. But, you know, if Mr. Poilievre is going to stick around, if he is going to form government, who is going to fill those key portfolios, those key front bench jobs that, you know, voters who think about these things can look at it and make a decision? Because this is also one of the challenges that when your party brands are usually close, so the most recent polls have the Liberals ahead pretty consistently by 3 to 7 points, depending on what you look at. The leadership numbers are the challenge right now, right? It's that direct contrast between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. You can get around a bit of that by building a team that you can put out there, that it's not just me, it's these people in these roles for these functions with this agenda. That is a departure from what we've seen since he's been leader, and it's going to need that. And one of the other challenges, too, is that with the way Mr. Poilievre won his leadership by putting his opponents into a wood chipper, right? That sort of those rivals, they're not there, right? They have sort of, in some ways, been pushed away. So does that change that you grow who's around and who's interested rather than just highlight who you have, right?
Well, look, I'm well aware of the relationship with Poilievre and his opponents during the leadership race. Mayor Patrick Brown of Brampton was one of them. That was a very, very rough relationship. They meet once in a while now, and they chat and they talk about the issues of Brampton and other issues around the country. So he has done that work, or he's doing that work of reaching out across the conservative spectrum and building those alliances again. And to the point about the caucus, there's a lot of depth in this caucus, and I agree, he should be putting them out there, and it's an opportunity to do that now. You know, unite behind his message and have these people amplifying it. I do think Canadians will be looking to see who is the team. Is the Conservative Party a government in waiting? Can we show that we are? And it's not just the Prime Minister, it's good to have that strong bench, and we have it, so we should show it.
I'll just end on this, and I'll let you guys get on with your day. What does he have to do now? There was some talk last night from, I think it was Steve Outhouse, telling our colleagues that he was going to be doing more traveling, that he was going to be crossing the country. I mean, he'll have to be in the House as well, obviously. But what sort of action would you expect to follow this result?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think that, you know, to a point that was made earlier, there is an opportunity while the Prime Minister is doing significant international travel to be meeting with Canadians and real people and drawing a bit of a contrast there on more of a domestic issue set, vice what the Prime Minister is pursuing in terms of free trade deals. You mentioned last night the Conservatives benefit from a significant war chest. Start using some of it now.
Yeah.
Don't wait for the rainy day. I think that it's a great opportunity to get out in front of Canadians, particularly while you know, the Liberals are also running some ads to get out there and put forward an alternative. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see new commercials and advertising and social that really builds on some of the themes that we saw last night around unity and hope and a more optimistic message.
Yeah, use the speech.
On that point, the Liberals aren't just running ads. The government of Canada is running ads.
Yes.
This is something that Trudeau Liberals did not do for whatever reason, and the Carney Liberals do. We're going to build, and it is a government of, it reminds me of the old Economic Action Plan ads from the Harper era.
Yes.
Similar tone, similar message, similar vibe, similar time.
Not long till we see the signs. With arrows.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just interesting to see that it is not just the Conservatives having all of that runway to themselves like they had under the Liberals.
Yeah, to the point about traveling, this country is so vast. It's the second largest in the world, and it's hard to get around. And when you're not in a region for a while, you don't know what's going on there necessarily, and also they don't feel loved. They're not hearing from you directly in the region. You can do videos from Ottawa all the time, but it doesn't resonate the same. So I think he should be traveling a lot when he can. Obviously, he has a very important job in the House of Commons to do as leader of the opposition, but whenever he can, he should be on the road, getting out there and meeting Canadians and doing what he's very, very good at doing.
Yeah. Kate Harrison, Fred Delory, thank you for coming back. We appreciate it.
Good to see you guys.
Okay, have a good rest of your Saturday. Is it Saturday?
I think so.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Calgary? Yeah, we're in Calgary.
All right, joining us now is Lisa Raitt, a former Conservative cabinet minister, former deputy leader, a regular feature on all of David's programming. Lisa Raitt, nice to see you this morning.
Great to be here, Rosie. Thank you very much. Hi, David, and tell Kate that's a great jacket she's wearing.
I already told Kate it was a great jacket. I agree. Lisa, David and I are both we're going to sort of tag team things here, but I'll start. Obviously, the number was great news for Pierre Poilievre and for his team. Were you surprised at how high it was, and what do you think that tells us?
So I didn't think anybody would get more than what Stephen Harper got, 84%. So my prediction going in was just a snick below it, but good for the Poilievre team. That's the way to make sure that you work hard to get the number that is going to show people that you have an iron grip on this party and that everybody is behind him. Like everybody, you can say, is behind him when it comes to talking about the go forward platform for the Conservative Party.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered whether last night, for me, it seemed like the first time maybe since Stephen Harper that someone could say this is the party of Pierre Poilievre. Because I'm not sure we really saw that same dominance with Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole for a variety of reasons. But I wonder whether you would agree with that notion that he really has the strong organizational base of the party and that people are with him in spite of everything.
Absolutely. And I don't know about in spite of everything. I mean, the reality is that we've gone through an incredible year. Who thought that we would have been where we are today, quite frankly? It's only a year ago since Prime Minister Justin Trudeau resigned. But I think what it shows is that he's got some grit. He's got some resilience. So he didn't win his own seat. He had to run in a by-election. He is buffeted by all kinds of polling that's showing Prime Minister Carney as being in the right path, but he's still sticking exactly to what the game plan has always been, and that is to build a conservative movement, get out and talk to the people, and talk about principled conservative values. He delivered on that last night, and his team delivered on it too.
So Lisa, I wonder what happens now. I'm struck by something that Paul Wells said on my show this week, that Friday night wouldn't be the end of it, Saturday would be the beginning of it, right? Because I think we all thought coming into this, the party was very largely behind Pierre Poilievre, and certainly we have the data now to back up those assumptions. But it is expanding it, winning back some of the accessible conservative voters who may have issues with style and tone and leadership, and they've parked with Mark Carney for the moment, which is what the public polling data would suggest. So what are the steps you think Mr. Poilievre needs to take to start moving beyond the 38%, which is bedrock, and adding to that with the accessible pool of voters?
You know, that's a really good analogy. That, you know, it's almost like it's day one after the loss of the election, but he had to go through an awful lot to get to this point today. As a result, you're kind of almost a year behind in terms of putting together what it's going to look like for the next federal election. So you had a conversation just a minute ago with Fred and Kate, and I think I'm going to pick up on that, which is it's a tried and true kind of tactic to get into the riding of an incumbent and just work it for 2 years while they're in Ottawa. It happened to me in Milton. Adam Van Couverden was in my riding for 2 years, knocking on people's doors, and was successful, absolutely worked. If Mr. Carney's going to be going around the world and doing trade deals and talking to other people, then Mr. Poilievre, it's great to go from kitchen door to community hall to church basements and talk to real people about what's going on with them in their own real personal lives, because that kind of relationship building actually does pay off at the end of the day. So it's not about trying to attract a different kind of conservative. It's just the consistent presence of being in the community and showing them that you're going to be a representative of the people, because eventually the topics do come away from being just about geopolitics and they become bread and butter issues.
There's no question about that, Lisa, but like while the Prime Minister is doing that, it's having an impact. He's making a presence there and he's generating, headlines around the world. Mr. Poilievre and the Conservatives seem to struggle a little bit with finding clear, consistent language and positioning on the U.S. and Trump, and don't really want to engage with it directly. What do you think they need to do there?
Yeah, I've heard some of your commentators talking about how they were disappointed that there wasn't more about Trump in the speech. I think that's to come. I think what the speech about last night was reflecting what he's being told from the grassroots. I can't deny the fact that you're going to have a response to what do you think about what's happening vis-a-vis Mr. Trump, and what would you do if you were the Prime Minister today? There has to be a response to that because that's top of mind right now. But it's not going to be top of mind forever. At some point in time, the day-to-day kind of things that people are going through, that's going to creep in. And I think that's where Pierre's building a lead over the Prime Minister in terms of being the one that knows what you're going through. And here's the policies that I think are going to be helpful to you. So one could say it's unfair that they take the tack, but as I said at the beginning, this is tried and true politics in terms of how to try to win hearts and minds of people.
What does he do, Lisa, with the fact that he still remains unpopular in public opinion polls? Like, certainly last night, as David referenced off the top, he seemed a little more upbeat, he seemed a little more relaxed, the tone was more positive, I would suggest. But we know Pierre Poilievre has both of sides of those in his personality, and I just wonder, how does he convince the Canadians that don't buy it that he is also what he demonstrated last night, just to improve his own standing?
Got to be about repetition, continuance, keeping those kinds of moments alive. Excuse me. The word that I kind of went through my head when I was listening to him speak last night. It's the first time that I've actually seen a bit of vulnerability in the leader. You know, you talk about leadership these days in 2026. Vulnerability is a big piece for leaders to show in order to connect with the people that are supporting them. He showed vulnerability last night. He showed really true to himself stories without seeming like he was trying to be a victim. He was just telling it the way it is, sharing with the crowd, and the response back, as you saw, was effusive. I think we'll see a little bit more of that, and you can't just you can't pivot. I love the word pivot. Everyone talks about pivot, but you just can't pivot right away and say, here I am, I'm completely different, like the new Pierre. That's not the way this is going to go. It's just going to be about getting to know him more and more, listening to what he has to say. And the question is, has he learned from the near-death experience? And I love those stories. I love comeback kids. So more power to him. Let's see what he can do.
I'll end on this maybe. Sure, comeback kid. But what was sort of lacking in the speech last night was any admission of mistakes. And maybe it wasn't the right forum for that. I don't know. There was that one message around EDAs and nominations, which has been an internal issue that has upset a lot of people, and sounds like he heard that message. But and maybe it's because he doesn't think he made mistakes. Maybe it's because he believes that affordability is still what he should be talking about. But I was struck by that a little bit, that there was no, hey, listen, that was a rough election, and I'm going to step up in this way.
Yeah, I know it was a year ago, so it's hard to talk about something that happened a year ago. I think what he has to do is recognize the fact that the question that you asked is still hanging out there. And he's not going to address it head on, he's going to have to show by action that he understands what is being said and that he's moving different direction. Steve Outhouse, great example. Merrifield being his decom, great example. I mean, he's doing things without announcing things, and maybe that's something. We may have a long time to the next election, Rosemary. Who knows? But definitely, I can see the team is ready and they're invigorated, and away they go.
Okay, Lisa Raitt, hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday there. Thank you so much for making time for us.
I'll be watching you guys. Have fun.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. That's Lisa Raitt, former Conservative cabinet minister and former deputy leader. Going to bring in some more Conservative. It's the Conservative Hour here because this is their weekend, and certainly a good weekend for Pierre Poilievre. Rachel Siegel is a former director of policy for Stephen Harper's government. Michael Solberg, a former staffer in the Harper government. Both regulars on David's show. Why don't you start, because I'm stealing all your people here. I mean, we're stealing them together.
Yeah.
Stealing them together.
Communal property. Well, Michael, just your thoughts on the 87.4%. I mean, I'm shocked at how pessimistic all of you conservatives were. I might get 80, might get 82, and here's the CBC host. I think he's going to get close to 90. I mean, what do you make of the fact that I seem to have a better sense of your party than you?
Well, I'm very disappointed in myself. I'm concerned for the future of my career as a pundit. But no, but in all actuality, what a great result for the leader. I think it clearly puts to bed the narrative that this party may not be behind him because of the election loss, because of the floor crossing, because of some of these controversies. He'll leave this convention, I think, with a unified party behind him. It was with a lot of wind in his sails, and I think that was precisely the tone that he struck in his speech, which was to prepare the base for battle here. And I think that battle is on the horizon, and I think Pierre Poilievre seems ready for it, especially because of that result.
So Rachel, on that, I'm not at all surprised. Delegates' membership behind Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to manufacture controversy here, but what about caucus, right? Because it is a two-step process. I'm not comparing him to John Rustad, but he won his leadership review in BC and was then out within a couple of months. Much lower, different type of leader, different type of party, I get it.
Yes.
But where do you think it is with the caucus right now?
Well, I also think that when comparing to John Rustad, the BC Conservatives are so different than the federal Conservatives in that it's a brand new party. They're trying to define themselves. What we saw from Pierre Poilievre last night was really trying to define who this new broad coalition that he's brought into the party are. And we heard him him talk to the grassroots. We heard him talk about to the people in the room that had stories that he told, and try and show people who is supporting him and who he's going after. I mean, at one point he was talking about the unions and how they are now conservative voters, conservative supporters. So I think that in terms of the caucus, caucus here has been united with him, and I think they will continue to, now that we're over this hump of what will he get, will he survive, won't he? I think the direction of the party and caucus is really, okay, let's go. And I had a little chuckle when they were playing Don't Stop Believing, because that was really the message of the speech last night. And I think from everything I've taken away from the last couple of days, caucus is solidly behind the leader and ready to go if there is an election call in the next few weeks.
I'm not sure it's, again, I'm not trying to make trouble, but I'm not sure it's quite that solid. Publicly, I think it is. I'm not saying anyone's getting ready to do anything, but I do wonder, and maybe the result will quiet some of that, but I do know there are some people who, coming out of the weekend, still wonder what's next. It's one thing to win the room, it's another thing to win the country. And I wonder what he needs to say to those members of caucus, do you think?
Well, look,
and I'm not making them up, they're real.
Fair point, but that's true of every national party. These are large national catch-all parties. There is going to be some discontent within every caucus.
Sure.
And it becomes a problem when it starts to bubble out publicly. People start making statements to the media or going out on Twitter. Look, the Liberals are divided as well, publicly so, at least on the issue of pipelines. We know that's true. This is going to be an issue for every party. I think Pierre can correct for this by reaching out into his caucus. I think he has the support now clearly in the mandate to do that from the result of this weekend, to pull his caucus back together, I think tighten up the message again and make sure that everybody's unified, not just in terms of their support for this leader, but also in the message that they're taking to Canadians, and that there's no kind of dissent, which can knock them off message and create risk and vulnerability for them heading into a potential election.
And try and stay on top of those relationships too, right? To reach out to the caucus, that's always a challenge for any leader.
For sure.
But for a leader who could be subject to the Reform Act and could be pushed out by his own caucus, even more reason to stay connected to everybody.
Yeah, and I think that what do they say? Your worst day in government is better than your best day in opposition. And the Conservatives were this close to government a year ago, and now losing the election, continuing on in opposition, that's really frustrating for caucus.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I think that going back to the narrative of last night, not only was he telling the grassroots that to not stop believing, that there is a plan to win the next election, I think that's what he will now have to go back to Ottawa and say to his caucus, that we are now united, we are together. And interestingly, on the Uber ride over here, I was in the car with another Conservative, and he said, boy, did he sell that room last night. Now let's sell it to Canadians. Yeah. And I think that is the message coming out of this convention.
I wonder though, Michael, when they all go back to Ottawa, now that he has had his mandate renewed, in the run-up to the last election, the grip on the actions, the public utterances, the SO31s, the statements MPs read in Parliament, iron grip from the centre, from the opposition leader's office. People don't run for office to go be a member of Parliament to read what a junior staffer hands them. They have their own ideas, their own opinions. Does he try to reassert that level of control now, or does he lengthen it and let the caucus continue with some of the newfound freedom that they've had since the defeat last year?
It's a great question. In my conversations with some of my MP friends, I think they've enjoyed some sense of freedom that they've had since summer. Yeah. They've been able to go and do different things, speak on issues that are important to them, go on media, such as this show, which they weren't doing before. So I think that will probably be the request of many, is to loosen the leash a little bit. Say we will about Jenny Byrne. She's a friend of mine. I will never speak ill of her, but she's out as the campaign chair. Perhaps Steve Outhouse has a role here and has a different tact in terms of the approach of MPs. Perhaps Pierre looks at what occurred in the last election and decides to take a different approach as well. But to Rachel's point, he's going to go back to Ottawa. He has a fresh mandate now, and I think the next stage of the hard work here is those closed-door caucus meetings about what are we going to run on this time, what are our new ideas, and how can we sell it. Is it going to be really tightly controlled in terms of controlling that message, perhaps, or will he give them some leash to kind of go and court ideas on their own, on things that they believe in their ridings?
Yeah, I mean, Rachel, message discipline is one thing, but strangling the individuality and even the regional issues out of your caucus, to just keep hammering home the same talking points to get clips for social media, that's what we saw all the time. And I don't think Atlantic Canadian MPs, want to be stopped from talking about the fishery, for example. You need to let people do these things. I just wonder if it's going to be allowed in the new mandate.
Last night, being in the room, I felt a little breath of fresh air. We saw people holding signs that said hope, and people were chanting hope, hope, hope. And that's kind of a narrative we haven't heard from this party in a long time. And so it kind of felt like there was a little touch of Steve Outhouse in this room last night, that there was a little direction shift, and that
his reputation is getting such a bounce.
Well, I'll give him a shout out, but it felt like they know the Conservatives have taken stock. They know where they need to go. They know what they need to do if there's going to be an election in the next few months, which we're potentially anticipating. And they really set the stage for where the Conservative Party is. And like I said, who is in it? Because that's been a big factor, is who is a Conservative in 2026? How do we define conservatism? And I think what Pierre tried to put forward was, we lost the election, I lost my seat, I have a new one, now how do we move forward? And here is the post-mortem that we have done and how we are going to do that. We saw him come out and talk about some of the policies that he's still behind, that he still would bring forward on day one. Yep. And while it wasn't the deep policy dive that we wanted to see, we wanted him to lay out the platform and tell us, it was a reiteration of the fact that he had a plan and has a roadmap to get Canadians on side with this party.
Okay. Rachel Siegel, Michael Solberg, thank you for coming back on a Saturday. Enjoy the rest of the convention. While Pierre Poilievre touted some of his successes in the last election, he also spoke about some of the lessons learned, not just out of the election, but also at this week's convention. Take a listen.
Elections teach us lessons, like, for example, the need to hold earlier and open nominations, to have more local autonomy, to empower our local riding associations. And for that, I want to thank all of you in this room who have provided such valuable input in the lead up to and throughout this convention. You told us to ignore the voices who keep telling us to abandon our conservative principles. We will remain true to our principles.
Couple of issues there that are important inside this room and for Conservative members, both the nomination process, which many saw as too rigid and too center dictated in the last election, and of course staying true to Conservative values and not letting pundits, oh my gosh, influence where the party would go. Joining me now is Peter MacKay, former Conservative Deputy Leader, Minister of Justice, Defence, Foreign Affairs, and I will say on this morning, Peter MacKay, dedicated hockey father, because you are indeed at a hockey rink, as most Canadian dads are on a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm in a different arena tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, Rosie, and I've been to enough of those conventions to have a little bit of a feel for what's going on. Saw the speech, and as you noted, it's interesting to see a bit of the subtle but real shifts that were signaled last night, including taking a look at a bit of the plumbing of the Conservative Party as far as nominations go, and the policies and direction, I think, that Pierre outlined in what was a compelling speech, and obviously well received by Conservative members there gathered in Calgary.
What did you make of the number, the support, 87.4%, Peter MacKay?
Well, it's impressive. There's no other way to describe it. It's surpassed the high water mark that was set by Stephen Harper in 2005, when, as has been talked about, he was coming back from an electoral loss in 2004. And, it lays a path out for Pierre that clearly demonstrates control of the party. It's his party. He was speaking to a very enthusiastic audience last night, and that was reflected in the vote total that he received. And so this puts a little bit of the doubt or the shadow that was cast over him. He secured a seat there in Alberta, and now it's back to work. It's hitting the road and laying out what I think he quite clearly pointed to in his remarks, which were appealing to Canadians and not losing sight of the larger picture here, which is not to convince Conservatives and people who've already voted for him, but for those who maybe had doubts.
Yeah.
or perhaps
Well,
more pointedly, those who are now having doubts about Mark Carney.
I'll bring David in a minute, but he did allude, obviously, to the situation in the world. He talked about Canadian sovereignty. It was a fairly patriotic speech, I would say, and he did talk about tariffs and how Conservatives are open to helping the Prime Minister deal with the United States. He didn't in any way sort of denounce the particulars of what the U.S. President said. And when I was talking to your former colleague Jason Kenney, who's going to join us in a little bit last night, he said that he thought that was a missed opportunity for a Conservative leader to take a stand on, some of the things that Donald Trump has said about Canada in the past couple of weeks. I wonder, as a former Foreign Affairs Minister, Defense Minister, whether you two think that you would like to see the Conservative leader or the Conservatives go a little bit further down that road.
Well, I mean, yes and yes. I think he is very much going to have to lay out his plans and an approach that he would take that would differ from that of the Prime Minister, and that would hopefully be more effective, quite frankly, than the current Prime Minister has been able to situate himself and the country, which is a hard thing to do, Rosie. I mean, I'm not underscoring in any way how absolutely difficult it has been for Mark Carney and for his government to try to find a path through what has been a very mercurial and unpredictable president and administration. However, I think the most important thing that I heard Pierre say was that he was, in fact, ready to work with this government when it came to the United States, when it came to perhaps securing trade with other countries. That's important. The other thing I heard him say, which I completely agree with, is, while a previous administration under Mr. Harper was effective in signing trade agreements, we now have to give them effect. And I think that's also a fair criticism of this government, that they have signed agreements, including MOUs with Alberta, but including recently announced trade agreements prior to his speech in Davos. But now there has to be action. There has to be an actual traction to these agreements that are going to help the Canadian economy. And so I think you'll see more on this subject. It's not a matter that is going to disappear in any way. And so I think you're going to be hearing more from Pierre Poilievre when he gets back to Ottawa on this exact subject of how to deal with the United States and the Trump administration.
So, Peter MacKay, first of all, let me say I'm jealous that you're at the rink. I missed my 9-year-old's hockey game to be here in Calgary today, so I have hockey dad FOMO. But look, on this offer to work with the government on dealing with the United States, I know the leader says that in his speech. I know Jamil Javani has put that out there because of his personal friendship and relationship with J.D. Vance. But then if you look at the social media feeds of members of the Conservative Caucus, they were this week calling the Prime Minister a liar, siding with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on his version of what apparently happened in that phone call with the President. How do you square those? Like, if you're the government and you're getting an offer at the top level from a podium from the leader, but then all over the socials and everything, you're being called a dishonest liar and people are siding with the version of events from the U.S. administration, how do you trust that? How do you bring them into the tent when that dual track is playing out?
Yeah, and that's a fair question and a criticism, but it's also, I think, worth pointing out that you're never going to be able to control what everybody and anybody is doing on social media. And that is becoming more and more apparent every day. I think, message discipline and perhaps this signal now coming from Pierre Poilievre that he wants to lower the tone on the rhetoric, at least that's what he said, and he's got to hold himself to that standard as well. And he pointed out that government is, the goal. And I think that will hopefully bring about some of the discipline within, the rank and file, the party membership, certainly the caucus, and certainly those who want to be in government are going to have to fall in line. I also would point out, David, that I think there's an opportunity for members of his caucus, people like Michael Chong, people who have experience previously in dealing with the United States and doing foreign affairs in a different way, calling on them, putting them in a position to speak to counterparts and connections that they have in the United States and elsewhere, and upping their game in a positive way, in a pro Team Canada will. And that, I think, would reflect very well on him, on the party, and I think it would be well received by Canadians.
Okay, Peter MacKay, I'll let you. Is the game ongoing? Are you missing the third period?
Well, we're in the third period, Rosie. They're doing well. We're here at the Hector Arena in Pickville.
Okay. Thank you for stepping out. We appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. Thank you, Peter MacKay.
Okay.
When I saw the jacket, I thought he'd been deployed to the Arctic.
I know. I thought he was
up there
maybe on a
defending
farm or something. I didn't know. Anyway, there he is.
Raking outside.
We are
right
in
now,
Calgary. Yeah, that's right. We are in Calgary on this Saturday. It is the Conservative Convention. The main part of the convention got what happened really yesterday. Both Pierre Poilievre's speech to the base, to supporters, to Canadians, obviously watching the speech, really focused on some of the key issues that Poilievre has championed over many months, whether it be affordability, fighting crime, dealing with the energy sector. But also, of course, that key moment, his leadership review vote. That happened after the speech. Delegates voted for a couple of hours. They counted the ballots. There were more than 2,500 people, if I'm not mistaken, who voted. And he came out with what everyone in his team and those around him say is a very strong mandate, not only to continue as the Conservative leader, but to lead this party into the next election and sort of put the past year behind him, 87.4%. That's higher than Stephen Harper got during his leadership review, and that's the last time there was one of these, something that is mandated after an election defeat. So to talk more about what all this means going forward, Stephanie Levitz, a senior parliamentary reporter for the Globe and Mail. I'm Joëlle Denis-Bellavance, the parliamentary bureau chief for La Presse. Hello.
Good morning.
You guys get a little bit of sleep? A little
Tiny.
bit. Yeah. The results came in pretty late, but at least they came in, and they came in to, I think, an overwhelming sense of relief in some way from the Poilievre camp, not because they doubted that it would happen, but they wanted it to be a big number. They wanted to be able to leave this hall and say, okay, that's done, let's deal with what's ahead of us stuff.
Yeah, definitely a clean result,
Right.
as a lot of us were talking about here, editorially clean. No question about, oh, well, now what's he going to do? And, can he stay on? I guess what's interesting about the number is to contemplate how many of those voters, and absolutely their endorsement of Poilievre is real, how many were saying yes, and I think he can still be prime minister, versus yes, but what else would we do right now? And that's not to say they don't support Mr. Poilievre staying on. It's just that, okay, well, we had no other choice. We want to keep the party together. He deserves another chance, but it's not, are they feeling positive that he can actually win the next election?
Yeah, and that's what he has to do now. And that's not an easy task.
Yeah, and the vote last night, to me, allows Mr. Poilievre to turn the page on the last 6 months. He lost the election, he lost his seat, he lost 2 MPs. Polls indicate that he's quite behind Mr. Kenney in terms of popularity when it comes to the Prime Minister, but for him it's going to be a new beginning. And I expect that Mr. Poilievre will be more confident in the House of Commons, not looking back, whether there will be, a vote or not confidence from someone, but looking ahead into the next election. And the speech we saw last night was clearly election-style speech, that you had people holding cards, l'espoir, hope, and all that. And he was introduced again by his wife, Annela Poilievre, and that was, the main operation we saw during the election campaign. But so. I talked to a few MPs this morning, namely from Quebec, and they said they're happy because they feel that Mr. Poilievre changed his tone, and that was a key demand from them, because when they were in the writings, what they were hearing is that the tone of Mr. Poilievre is not what we want, and they feel that he flipped last night, more prime ministerial, and so they're happy and relieved that he has adopted a new tone. And those MPs will go back to their ridings and pleading with their people, saying, please start listening again to Mr. Poilievre. And that's, they feel that his speech will make it easier to do that.
The speech was, he was more positive, he was smiling more, he seemed relaxed, but the content was largely the same. And to me, I read that as sort of, I still believe in all these things that I put forward in the last election. I still believe they're the things that matter most to Canadians. And I don't doubt that the things that he's talking about matter to Canadians. I do doubt, though, whether he understands the moment that we're in
Yeah.
as a country, and whether he doesn't run the risk of what happened in the last election happening again, that those things hang over him and he can't seem to grasp how to differentiate himself or take a position against the Prime Minister that isn't against the country. I don't know, Steph, what you're thinking.
That's exactly that point, right? Steve Outhouse, the new campaign manager for the party, made that point to me in an interview where he talked about the biggest problem, not the biggest, but a problem that they really have right now in this context we're in, is when they oppose the government, when they criticize the government, the inference from their rivals is, well, you support Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And that's not the case necessarily.
Yeah.
They do not support Donald Trump, and they struggle to articulate that. I think also, I was talking to a few MPs this morning as well, and the point they made, people who are largely on side with Mr. Poilievre, but they made the point, one of them said, last week in my riding there was a murder, a cold-blooded murder. It was awful. It was heinous. That same day, Carney gives a speech in Davos, and everyone's paying attention to that. And it's very hard to recalibrate. Mr. Poilievre, all of his success in politics since he became leader on the road to leader was about really reaching people where they are in their everyday life. But I think perhaps Canadians now are grappling with twofold concerns, right? They have their day-to-day, their struggles day-to-day. Hanging over that is this existential dread. And that is a product of Donald Trump, global upheaval, tariff wars everywhere else. I don't know how you do those two things. And at some point, Mr. Poilievre, and probably Mr. Carney, has that same challenge in the other direction.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do they, both of them, meet the moment that reflects where Canadians are as a whole and not just a piece of that?
No, there are bread and butter issues that are very important to this space, to Mr. Poilievre, and that's part of his cheval de bataille, if I may say in French. Now, the last election, Mr. Poilievre lost the election when Canadians asked themselves the question, who's best to face Donald Trump? Since this week, there's a new issue on the table, national unity. And that, people will be asking the question, who's best to protect national unity? And that is very much a concern, namely in Ontario. And historically, the Liberal Party has been seen as the best party to keep national unity. So this is another thing that Mr. Poilievre will have to adjust and pivot on.
Yeah, it's interesting just on the tone thing, JD, and this is what I wonder about, because it was definitely a different type of speech and a different style and tone. It was none of the Canada's broken, defund this, fire that, kind of thing that we're used to seeing. My question is, will he sustain it? Because we've seen attempts to do this before, right? It's not a pivot, it's growth, in a way. But then when you get back to your first aggressive press conference or you get back into Parliament and you revert to type, right? And that sort of pugilistic, aggressive, kind of sarcastic style tends to come out. And on the larger Trump issue, I know it's tough, but you can't wait it out. If you're Prime Minister, you can't wait these things out. And if you're an opposition leader in a moment like this, you can't wait these things out. I have this bookmarked on my laptop. There are 1,085 days left in the Trump presidency. 12 minutes and 6 seconds, if you want to be precise. It's a countdown clock. You can't wait those things out. The positive look's a better look, but can he keep with it? That's my question.
We saw in the last election that Mr. Poilievre could not pivot his strategy to adjust to the elephant that was there, Mr. Trump. And so you're right, and I would say a funny expression, I would use what you described, that will he go back to his old style? I call that a cha-cha, a political cha-cha. 2 step forwards, 2 step backwards. He needs to adopt a new dance. He needs to valse, do a valse other than a cha-cha, so that he can keep going forward. And that, will be the challenge for Mr. Poilievre on many fronts. His base likes his pugilistic style, but Canadians want another kind of speech in the face of Trump's threat and the face of national unity challenge now.
Steph?
Conservatives, by and large, are incrementalists, right? Up until sort of Mr. Poilievre came along when he started talking about ripping up everything and going back, conservatives are incrementalists. And I think what we've seen with Mr. Poilievre is incremental growth, incremental pivots. If you're looking for him to do a 180, that is not in his nature.
No.
He has spoken a lot over the years about, I am who I am. I believe this. I have always believed this. But then if there are small things that he can do, like they say with like going to the gym or keeping your New Year's resolution. Consistency is key, and you just have to do one little thing every day and make a difference. Perhaps, and I don't know that we'll see some of this. I mean, Peter MacKay's point about using the team, deploying other people, there is a way to check against some of Mr. Poilievre's him reverting to his instincts, right? Which is, does he have to answer to every question? We'd love him to answer to every question. But, as he's, begun putting MPs on your guys' shows and he's pushing out more people, there's a way to showcase to Canadians a broader depth there that may play well for him, and he'll learn over time. I mean, you think about him, just, all of us are parents, right? And watch how our kids have changed who we are. You saw that in the speech when he talked about his daughter. Like he's inching towards some degree of growth that comes from time and experience, and maybe listening to people saying, if you really want this, Mr. Poilievre, if you really want to be Prime Minister, you've got to start working a bit differently than you've ever worked before in your life.
Okay. Joël Denis-Bellavance, Steph Levitz, thank you. Nice to see you both here. You're on my show tomorrow, I think.
Indeed,
so
I am.
Get some sleep in the interim. To see you. Thank you all. We're standing by here in Calgary. We've got a couple more guests before we wrap up the hour. We wanted to take a little bit more time to reflect on that vote that came in so late Eastern time, around closer to midnight here, Mountain. 87.4% for the Conservative leader, who leaves this convention, I would imagine, feeling bolstered, excited about his job again, probably also feeling like, okay, I can put some not so great weeks and months behind me and focus on what I want to do, which is to hold the government to account and to continue to talk about some of the issues that matter to so many Conservatives in this room.
Yeah, it's been a tough year, right? If you're a Conservative and you go back to January of 2025, Justin Trudeau had just been defeated without the need to have an election, forced out by a combination of toxic polls, a rebellious caucus, and then the coup de grace from Chrystia Freeland. And it was there. It was going to happen, and they were going to win. They had the 25-point lead, and now they're here. They have been struggling with that seismic reversal of fortunes and that defeat, and then the defection of Chris d'Entremont, and then the announced resignation, but still in process resignation of Matt Genereux, amidst rumors that he was ready to defect and maybe got bullied into going with the resignation option instead. And then, of course, the surprise defection of Michael Maw at the Christmas party. So all of that was happening while this was hanging over their head in terms of the leadership vote. They've cleared the decks on these things now, right? Like, he has gotten the resounding mandate he wanted. 87.4% is a big number. And it's not like when you come home with a test and people are like, what happened to the other 12.6%? There's lots of room for improvement here. There's really not. Like, in a national party, you get over 87%, especially one as kind of diverse and, I don't want to say fractious as the National Conservatives.
It's a complicated coalition.
It's a complicated coalition, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be 10% that are going to be pissed off no matter what. Just never going to vote yes, right? But so to really get to 87.4, that's it. Like, that is what he needs to go back. Caucus management is an ever constant challenge. Allowing them to show their skills and flex their might a little bit more than he did during his first term as leader. That's going to be, I think, a key thing to sustain this and build the credible challenge to the Mark Carney Liberals and close that gap, because the leadership numbers are still bad. It needs to be the team numbers that carry you forward, because if, as Steph said, it's going to be incremental growth from the leader because he's not a big pivot guy, he is who he is, then it needs to be a broadening of capacity with a front and center front bench and a real credible government in waiting play, rather than I'm the wrecking ball to get rid of the Liberals, vote for me as your agent of change.
Right.
Mark Carney became that agent of change. You need to offer something else now.
Joining us now is Jason Kenney, former Conservative federal minister, defense, multiculturalism, employment, immigration.
Premier.
There's probably more than that. Former Premier of Alberta. Nice to see you again. Thank you for coming back. I assume you were at Cowboys, the bar, all evening. That's where most Conservatives were last night.
I did find my way there, yeah.
I was teasing you.
It's the hotspot during Stampede for sure.
Yeah, okay. You've had a little bit of time now to sleep on this and the number, and what did you make of that decision by people?
My own personal hunch it would be in the mid-80s, so he did better than that a little bit, and I'm not surprised. B, I think it's good for the party. Because it's certainty. The worst thing is you end up in that sort of mid-70s zone, and it's enough support to stay, but there's enough dissent that it's problematic. So I think, as David was just saying, this helps with caucus. The leader's position in caucus is unassailable. I think I've known Mr. Poilievre since he was 16, and I know that he is politically experienced enough and has enough intuition and EQ to understand that the 87% number wasn't entirely enthusiastic, that there were people who voted yes who had certain concerns and reservations, and I think he knows to respond to that. I think he's got to balance a couple of things. One is the internal party base constituency, which is why he emphasized last night, doesn't matter what the pundits say, I'm not going to compromise on any of our principles, but he also needs to get that extra segment of the electorate to become prime minister, which means less, as David was just saying, projecting less of the attack dog opposition leader and more of a prime minister in waiting. So I think this is the moment to move towards presenting a government in waiting, to be a prime minister in waiting. I think there are things he can do. Now, none of that means he has to stop his, I think, populist style and approach, but to add into it a greater depth and gravity. If I were him, I would be doing a couple of foreign trips, big set-piece policy speeches. Go to Washington and speak at the American Enterprise Institute about the value, to a center-right think tank, about the value of NAFTA, implicitly criticizing Trump protectionism. Go to London, meet with center-right leaders and speak to one of the think tanks there. I would, if I were him, I'd go to Ukraine and commit my support of a future conservative government to Volodymyr Zelensky. The kinds of things where people can picture him as a prime minister. I think it's very important as well that he reaches out and develops a team for the next election, starting now, that looks like a potential front bench. Stephen Harper did that with a lot of former provincial ministers, people with executive experience, senior government experience. So these are all opportunities, I think, for him to manage both sides.
One of the things I did hear over the course of the morning from some Liberals is, well, it would have been nice to have uncertainty, but we're okay with Pierre Poilievre too, because they know they can beat him, they know what he's like, and they feel like this will work out for them. What would you say to those Liberals?
Rosie, I would say that would be their line, regardless who the Conservative leaders. If Mother Teresa had gotten an 87% vote last night, they'd be saying that. Never underestimate your adversary. We made that mistake with Justin Trudeau in 2015. Yeah. The same Liberals who say that should remember that Mr. Poilievre effectively built that long and significant lead that drove Justin Trudeau out of office. He reset the national issue agenda. He forced them to do a 180 on everything from carbon tax to capital gains to energy superpower to you name it. And that 40% has not gone away. I mean, maybe there's been some softening in some areas, but he has got this party in a very competitive position. If they get back into liberal arrogant mode, which my liberal friends will admit is very easy for them to do, and they become very dismissive of him, I think that would be a big mistake on their part.
The foreign policy stuff you're talking about, though, that just doesn't seem to be on the radar, of his priority agenda. Ukraine might be difficult. Just there's mixed views on NATO and Ukraine in the coalition, right? And wars in faraway lands, as he said in Parliament. This would be a big departure for Mr. Poilievre.
And I would argue a necessary one. I think that, as I told you last night, I thought one of the disappointments was not taking on the Trump threat and reality directly. I just don't think you can elide past that, and it becomes almost too obvious. So when he does have to do it, it looks too, not natural, but obvious. One other point I wanted to make internally here, or in the broader Conservative coalition, about people who are still, right now there's a PC convention going on in Ontario. There's a lot of grassroots Tory activists who are in Toronto and not Calgary today. That's because that's a result of this spat that's been happening.
Yeah.
So I think this is a moment for him, a moment of strength, where he can reach out in humility to Premier Ford, to Premier Houston, to other provincial leaders, to other Conservatives who, for one reason or another, people whose nomination, key activists who were railed in the nomination process, reach out. The Conservative operation in the lead up to the last election, sometimes the word internally was they went out of their way to pick winners and losers, to make enemies and not friends. And that 20-point lead led perhaps to a degree of cockiness. Now, very important that those wounds be healed, those relationships be repaired. He has a great opportunity.
Jason Kenney, thank you for coming back again this morning. David Cochrane, see you back in Ottawa. I'm Rosemary Barton. I'll be back with more coverage on the Conservative Convention and other issues on Rosemary Barton Live tomorrow morning. David will be back on Monday. We'll give him at least one day off. Lots more ahead here on CBC News Network from Calgary. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.